Hey guys, welcome back to Wild West Woodscraft. I'm Trevor, and I'm out here for a overnight backpacking trip. And it's the first overnight backpacking trip of this winter. So, thought I'd bring you guys along, kind of show you some stuff that I do to stay comfortable in a cold weather, snowy environment. It's currently not that cold right now. It's almost 50 degrees when I left my car. So, it's not exactly below freezing, but it's supposed to get cold tonight, so this is kind of a good example of how I camp when it's I guess in early and late winter. I'm here in the Rocky Mountains, so some of this stuff might not work in different areas. However, a lot of it will, as long as it's a snowy environment. Cold weather without snow is a whole different game. I consider snow a resource. While it can hinder your movements and make things more difficult, it can also provide you a lot of other things like water, like even building materials. And fires aren't as big of a concern in the winter when there's snow, because there's so much moisture, stuff isn't going to easily catch, so you can have bigger fires. But yeah, thought I'd bring you guys along. I'm currently hiking a loop trail right now, so I'm really just going to hike it until I find a good spot to camp. The snow is not deep enough for snowshoes yet this time of year. It's kind of right in the middle. If I were to wear snowshoes, it would help in some areas, but in other areas it would be a hindrance. So I opted out of them. I just got boots with gaiters on. But I need some water. So one tip, I guess the first tip of the trip, don't bring a filter bottle or a filter at all in cold weather. All it is you constantly have to try to keep it from getting frozen. And if a filter freezes, it can be compromised and your water can get contaminated. If there's snow, best thing to do, if you have a fire, is just melt snow. If you don't have a fire, what I usually do is every time I take a drink, I'll just grab some clean snow, add it to my water bottle, so there's still water in there, and so that snow will start to melt in that water, and so you can constantly just keep it topped off. You never want your water bottle to be completely full, because if it does freeze, it will burst the bottle. So I always keep about an inch of airspace in there. But if you keep topping it off with snow while you're on a hike, you don't have to stop and build a fire. So that's kind of a good tip. Now you have to ration your water. You can't drink it all at once, because then you have nothing to melt that snow. So take a couple drinks, fill it with snow, and you can drink some more later, and keep repeating that process as you continue moving. That doesn't work if it's super frigid cold, but if it's not, if it's above zero, I find it usually works. As you're on the move, that snow will start to melt, as long as you have about half your bottle full of water. So, but I'll take a quick break, because another thing about wintertime, you don't want to constantly be moving, because you'll start to sweat, and if you sweat, then you get wet, and then when you stop, you'll be wet and cold. So take it easy, enjoy nature, enjoy your surroundings. You don't have to push it real hard. Sometimes there's times you have to, but most of the time you don't need to. So take a break every so often, hydrate, and allow your back to start drying out. And if you start feeling yourself overheating, start shedding layers. It's better to be comfortably cool than too hot and start sweating. So I started this trip just wool base layer on over or under my normal clothes, and even that's awful warm. But because I'm moving slow, taking a lot of breaks, I don't really have to worry about shedding layers. So I didn't bring a paper map for this trip. I do have a compass, but I don't always bring paper maps because as long as I know roughly the area I'm in and I'm kind of familiar with this area, with a compass I can always get back to a known point, follow that back to the road where I'm parked. But just using the phone, I previewed these maps before I came out here, so now that I have no service, it's I can still see them. But the plan is, I've never been to this creek here. I don't know how big it is, what it looks like. It doesn't show it as seasonal, so I don't know. I figure I'll go take a look at it. Even while using a phone, having a compass is still nice because you can orient the map and compass. So, as you can see, now you don't want to get the phone too close to the compass because it'll throw it off because there's metal in the phone. But north is that way, top of the map is north. So once I get to that curve, which is just up there, I will head off down towards that creek. See what it looks like. I probably won't camp next to the water because cold air usually settles in low spots, and that's usually where the water is. But it's always good to know waterways. Prior to trails, waterways were really the way people would navigate. That and ridges and valleys. So I always try to be familiar with all the creeks and streams and rivers in an area that I frequent, because if you ever didn't want to use trails, you could use the water, follow that. Also, when there's not snow on the ground for about half the year, it's good to know where water is so you can rehydrate. It looks like just down there might be where the creek is. This map's awful zoomed in, so the scale's pretty big. Let's go see. It's funny, as soon as you step off trail, the snow gets deeper. You got to be careful when walking in deep snow. You don't want to rush, because like just right here under the snow there's a log, and you can catch that with your foot, trip, hit your head on that. Not a good day. So there's ways to move quickly through the snow, but you want to be careful if you're not used to it, so that way you don't end up hurting yourself. When it gets deeper, you know, in the middle of winter, there'll be about 5 feet of snow through here, and you could, in some of these dead trees, get your foot stuck and twist an ankle or break something. So just want to be careful. That's why having a trekking pole like this is nice, because you can test the ground before you step on it, make sure there's nothing crazy underneath the snow. It does look like this is our creek down here. Now when it comes to water in wintertime, your best strategy is avoid it. Cross it as an absolute last resort, because getting wet in a cold weather environment is a really bad day. Sometimes you have to cross it, and there's ways to do that safely, but generally my strategy is just avoid it, or try to cross over on logs or rocks. Crossing over on ice is very dangerous, especially on creeks, because you don't know what the creek is doing underneath the ice. and it could be kind of eroding away the ice, and it could just be this thin layer on top in some spots and thicker in others, and it's just a bad day. Now something like this, you're not going to get completely soaked in it, but you could get wet up to your knees or thighs, which is still a pretty bad day. So you always want to be careful with water. Never cross it if you don't have to. That's why usually I'll just use snow, for melting snow, to get my water, so I don't have to try to mess with getting out and finding moving water. Because you can see down through there, the creek has eroded away some of that ice, or it hasn't completely frozen over. And if it were to snow a few more inches, it'd be completely flat across here. You wouldn't see that, and you could step in one of those holes. So, also that's why it's good to know where waterways are and be familiar with them, so you don't walk across something and not realize there's water underneath and fall through. Because yeah, I don't know where the bank stops. Is it right here? Is it further out there? And there's a whole lot of unknown ground to cross before I could get to that open water. So generally, I just don't mess with it. If I have to cross, I'll just move up or downstream, find some logs I can get across. Not usually something that high, but anything's better than walking straight across the ice. You just want to be careful, because if you fall off that, you could fall through the ice, and bad day altogether. So try to avoid water. Sorry about that, guys. Slipped in the snow and my head went in the snow. Alright, I think you guys can see. Alrighty. I'm gonna get back up around here and go start looking for a place to camp and see what we can find. I wanted to show you guys a resource that you want to be paying attention for in the wintertime. And that's dead pine trees that still have their boughs on them and all the needles. That usually means it's fairly recently dead. The reason you want to be looking for these that have fallen over is because if you notice, when you look around, there's not a lot of low-hanging branches. And so if you're in a situation where you had to spend the night, insulating yourself from the ground is really important. And in this environment, the best way to do that is with pine boughs. You make a mattress out of a bunch of pine boughs. And so finding a resource like this is really nice, because you can do that. Also, if you're just out here practicing skills, finding a tree that's already fallen over and dying, or dead, I guess, means you don't have to cut down trees that are alive and take the branches off. So that's usually not a great practice, except for in some situations. So finding something that's already dying, you can utilize that resource to build yourself a bed. I don't need pine boughs this trip because I brought a insulated pad, but always stuff like that to keep an eye out for. Know where those resources are, make a mental note, because you never know when you might need one. I'm just staying up on this ridge, following this creek, see where it goes, see if I can find a good campsite. When you're looking for a campsite in the wintertime, water's not really a concern because there's snow. So that one of the 5 W's you don't really have to worry about. You don't have to be near water. But some other things become more important. paying attention to wood. You will need a lot of firewood if you plan on using a fire to stay warm. So finding a campsite that's near a lot of dead wood, especially dead standing, or stuff like this that's up out of the snow, huge deal. Widowmakers, still a concern. You don't want to be under something that could fall on you during the night, and that includes snow. If you're in an environment that has gotten a lot of snow recently, there could be a bunch of snow hanging on all these pine boughs up in the trees, and that could fall on you, especially as the air heats up with a fire. It could fall on you, get you soaking wet, put your fire out. Bad day altogether. So stay away from widowmakers, and you have water everywhere. Find a place with a lot of firewood. You also want to pay attention to the wind and air. You don't want to be down low by that creek, because cold air settles. It'll be usually 10 to 20 degrees cooler down there in my experience. But you don't also want to be right at the top, because the wind will come through and make it cold. So find a good intermediate spot that you're blocked from the wind. You're not down low. Should be good. As far as wildlife is concerned, not a huge concern for me in the wintertime. Bears are usually hibernating, and bugs, snakes, stuff like that obviously won't be out. Not that we have a real concern with bugs or snakes even in the summertime here in the Rockies, but yeah, wildlife isn't a huge concern for me in the winter. Most of it's pretty well burrowed in for the winter. Sometimes rodents and stuff might bother you, but not a huge concern. So still want to pay attention to all 5 W's: wind, water, wildlife, widowmakers, and wood. But some of the things change in priority list. So man, is it a beautiful day. A lot warmer than I was expecting up here. It almost feels like springtime. Whew. Want to watch those slopes and get slippery with the snow. But anyways, guys, I'm gonna get back up to the ridge so I'm not walking along the slope, and keep looking for a campsite. When you're traveling in the snow, things have to change. Like I said, you're not going to be down along creek bottoms because of the risk of getting wet. You don't want to be walking along slopes because, like you saw, you can slip and fall. So usually you'll use valleys and ridges, but you don't want to be doing a whole lot of up and down. Even in snowshoes, that can be a pain. So travel becomes a different animal when you're in the winter. One nice thing is, once the snow is deep enough for snowshoes, you can start using a sled, which makes it a whole lot easier to carry more gear. So that kind of winter camping's fun, and I'll have to do some videos once we get the 5 feet of snow and it really settles in for winter around here. Alright guys, so I think I found the spot. I've been wandering around the area a little bit now, and I've been looking for something very specific. It's kind of a new thing I'm going to be trying this winter, because anyone who does winter camping knows that the bane of your existence is firewood. Constantly having to gather firewood. So I've been looking for something that might make that a little bit easier. And my theory is, find a spot where 2 trees have fallen in like a V shape. Like you can see here, there's a tree under the snow right here. And then if you were to build your fire, obviously clear the branches, build your fire right in that corner of the V. that would give you a lot of wood in those two trees. That's kind of wet, so it's going to burn slower. Because the problem with pine, which is all I have around here, is that it burns very quickly, and so you have to gather a lot of it. But if it's wet, it's not going to burn as fast. So 2 fallen trees, you can build the fire right there in that corner, and it will use these big logs as wood. And because there's so much snow on the ground, I'm not worried about it spreading. That's my theory. And depending on how cold it is, would determine how big of those logs you want to form your V. There's a spot over there that has some good like 12 to 14 inch diameter logs, so that would be good in really cold weather. It's not supposed to get that cold tonight, and I don't want a huge fire, so I'm thinking this is a good spot. I got this tree here, that tree under the snow. So if I were to clear out this snow, which normally what you want to do if there's snow is make a bowl or a hole in the ground. There's 2 schools of thought. One, you can dig down to the earth. The problem with that is as the snow melts, you're going to get mud. The other one is you can dig down almost to the ground but leave some snow, but that's just going to become ice. So you kind of got to pick your poison. Something you can do, dig down to the ground, build a big fire in the middle, dry out that ground. So depending on how much time you have to build your shelter, that you can decide on your own. Experiment with either option. I usually dig down to the ground, and then worry about the mud later if I need to. Because I don't think it's very safe to have ice on the ground when you're around a fire. So my theory is, dig a hole in the snow in this area right here. I'll sleep right along here. I'm thinking I might build a bed between this log and this log. We'll see. Clear out all this, use it all as firewood to get my fire going, but dig a big hole in the ground right here. Move the snow to the side to give me a little bit of a windbreak. As far as the 5 Ws, got plenty of water with the snow like we talked about earlier. Widowmakers, there are a few trees that are a little concerning because they're dead and leaning. But what I'll probably do is just cut those down and use those as firewood because they're right near my camp, so they'll be easy. Wildlife, there is a game trail. Where was it? Over there somewhere. Not too worried about that because I'll have these logs around me, so the deer and stuff aren't gonna walk through here. Plus with a fire, they're gonna avoid you. And then wood, plenty of wood around, like with these 2 logs. That's what I was looking for. So in a wintertime environment, wood is really your determining factor of where you camp. Thankfully here in the Rockies, there's a lot of beetle kill, a lot of dead pine, so you can camp just about anywhere and have lots of wood. But the problem is it burns quick, so you have to have a lot of it. So one downside is because I didn't bring snowshoes, clearing out the snow is going to take longer. With snowshoes, you can use those as a shovel, or if you have a shovel. I left both of those at the car because the snow's not deep enough to really justify it. It's only 12:30, so I got plenty of time. I don't really need to rush. I can take my time with this. So, yeah, that's the plan. I will go ahead and get started building camp.